Hey, what is up guys, it's your boy Tua here. This will be a video on something that has been requested for a little bit, and that is how to gear properly. So I'd like to call this the ultimate gearing guide because I'll be going over every single thing. Let's get it, pal. First and foremost is something that I want to address, and that is the class unique weapons. The reason why this is really good is because they have 3 options for your runes. This will allow your characters to survive a little bit more or have the biggest MP pool that you will need at the start of the game. So having these is actually really good. To acquire these, any of these pools will allow you to have a slight chance to get whatever you need, or you go to the general summon and pick a certain class worth to get. Now first, let's talk Asian gear. When you start out this game on the very first chapters, you will be able to get yourself Asian gear. The reason why this gear is the one that you should be aiming for throughout the first 9 chapters is for this reason: 7% damage increase, 8% damage increase, and damage reduction effect on top of that. That means that both your damage dealers will do more damage and your tanks will survive a little bit more. Once I reach about chapter 7, what I tend to do to gear myself up to get to chapter 9 and actually complete it is I do 7-12. Reason why I do this, I find that the drop rate over here is way better. Now these items come in different variations. What I get right now is attack, attack speed, and crit. The other ones that I really like is the HP, P, and M block. The reason for that is you will allow your tank to survive even better. So your tanks get the other ones. This is all of your damage dealer support at the start. Now most of the people are not struggling until they reach about chapter 7, 8, or 9. Now to get yourself through these chapters, I got a few mentions. So the tip that I want to give you guys is start farming 7-12 and at least upgrade your tank gear to maximum onto the Ancient Conqueror part. Once you have done that, you can actually complete chapter 8 quite easily if you do have the right characters. So the reason why I never go Black Dragon gear anymore is this. In contrast to Black Dragon, the Asian gear will give you so much more damage and survivability, and is probably one of the cheapest items for you to get. Meaning that ultimately, it will take you less stamina and less resources to get yourself to where you need to be, and that is clear chapter 9 as fast as possible. Reason for that being, if you can get yourself Fallen Freight super fast, that will help you out tremendously in terms of gameplay. However, there's obviously some noteworthy points of the dragon gear, and that is this box. This will give you a nice amount of items with attack, attack speed, crit damage. Now, this is not the most optimal gear that you can potentially find. 9 out of 10 times you won't need the attack speed or the amount of crit damage or even crit, because there are a lot of characters that will get yourself the crit required for you to do so. But this doesn't mean that the dragon gear is totally useless, because you can get yourself a fine amount of items that will be used in the long run anyway. Because if you go outside of the stages, let's say you want to farm dragons, if you want to farm, let's say, the trials, then obviously gear like this will allow you to do a little bit better. With this box, you will get yourself a little bit of HP, P block, and some M block on it, which is pretty decent for your tankers. And on the other hand, you will get yourself nice items when it comes to your attackers, which is attack, attack speed, crit damage. Now this is not the most optimized type of gear, but it will end up giving you that extra line which the Conqueror set does not provide. And all that you have to do is clear 8-10, do a little bit of dragon raids, and then grab yourself this one by buying the dragon box. Funny enough, there's also the lava ray one, which means that you got to complete chapter 8 fully and then clear the lava field 2 times. However, I find this for new players to be really hard, but if you have yourself a friend that can get you through this is absolutely a nice set. Now the same can be said for this hero suppression set and the hero protection set over here, but this is not where I'd like to put my emphasis on, but it will be the Dark Legion raid instead. Reason for it being, this will be your supportive gear. And what the supportive gear looks like is attack, attack speed, crit, and HP. This will amp up your survivability so much when it comes to any other part in the game. However, now is the time where you need to think about something that's called enhancements. And the reason why I want to address this is that your supporters will not have the right amount of P block. So when you see your supporters, you will have a 500 magical block but a 0 P block. And what I would like to give these people is go to the enhancement part, get yourself some legendary scrolls, and if possible, make sure to pop some P block on there. About 500 would be good, but if you don't have that much, don't be afraid. You will be able to get enough damage if you do have the right team. So the P block has two reasons, and it's very simple. It's little and big shockman. The reason why is defense doesn't help you at all in both of these stages. So if you get yourself a nice amount of P block, it will allow your healers to just survive. If you can clear this as a newer player, you can get a nice amount of resources from it. Another part worth mentioning would be Eclipse. Now the reason for that is, once again, more survivability. HP gets more value because you have more block, which negates the damage. So in contrast to putting just straight HP on there, I would recommend going P block instead on those. Now after you've completed 9-23, you need to get yourself the Fallen Frey and Dark Lord Kazuo. Reason for that, these characters are absolutely bogus for any new player. For what I know, you complete the 9-23, go up to the world tree, watch the story mode, then you go to the memory archives, press yes, go to the episode of Fate, and just the story dungeon is not enough. You need to be able to do the special dungeon that you get here 200 times, which will allow you to then send a gift and get yourself these characters for free. So now comes a part on how to transition from, let's say, the early game to the mid game, starting with chapter 10. Now the question would be, is my gear enough? Now with just a 0 star of these items, I don't think you will be able to make chapter 10 at all. So what do you do then? You get yourself to this raid part, field raids, and the items that you've just gotten, especially for your supporters, you can go to the Dark Legion raid and you can start farming this. Now there's a very particular item that I want to recommend for everybody. Obviously this boss is a physical damage dealer, so anything that is related with physical defense is good. But what I'd like to emphasize on is what should you get for your healers. Now every single one of your healers needs a P toughness rune. Reason why is you have 0 from the start, and this negates a lot of incoming physical damage, whereas magical toughness even throughout the rest of the game starts out with 150, meaning that all of your healers will always need 1 P toughness rune in your weapon. This is also one of the reasons why I think class unique weapons are necessary if you don't have as much of investments. And it is very simple. If you can get yourself a Dark Legion bracelet or any bracelet of that matter, then you will be able to survive way more on your healers. Now obviously when it comes to Dark Legion, there are a few items that are worth mentioning. One of them is for Fallen Frey, get yourself a full attack Dark Legion robe. This will amp up her shields, this will amp up all of the damage that your main damage dealer is doing. And is it hard to acquire? Nowadays it is not. Because what you do, you go to the forge, go to the shop, you go all the way down and buy yourself these T8 legendary gear options. Now unfortunately I don't have a 2 ticket anymore because I just used that today. However, if you get a Dark Legion 3-star ticket, which can be acquired by paying a little bit of cash, you will be able to select options 3 times of this, amp it up, and only the last piece you'll have to reforge. However, if you are not willing to farm that much for these Dark Legion raid parts, I do get it, because TM gear will be the ones that we are looking for nowadays because they are just so much better. Now what I do by this point, especially onto my tanks, I get a set with a lot of HP, P block, P defense, and a little bit of either attack speed or mana per attack. Reason why I picked this is for your world bosses. Now this is just physical, but for the magical you have an equal amount of armor, which is HP and block and magical defense. Now if you get items like those, your tanks will be able to survive any nuclear blast that will be thrown at your face. However, here's where you can make a decision. First and foremost, I got myself a nice amount of HP coming from the Dark Legion ring. But if you're running, for instance, the Trial of Flow, you might want to have yourself a nice amount of magical defense. Items like these are one of the things that you could be looking for, because this item is also used in World Boss 3, Vel'Khazar, and anything that I can name. that is a magical damage. And obviously physical has its own counterpart, which is the bracelet with a nice amount of base P defense. And one thing that I do want to mention, and that is onto your healers, is their base physical defense, in contrast to the secondary gear, which has almost 23k defense. A robe does only have about 10k ish, which is way lower. That means there is a big contrast between physical defense and magical defense when it comes to your supporting character. To counter this phenomenon, you just pick something that gives you physical defense and you can amp that up completely. This is very good for your Trial of Sky. Another mention on a 4-line character, that would be Livril, because she scales very well with critical damage. Is this the only stat that you need to get? Well, if you do have the luxury to get it, I would take this. But since I don't like Livril all that much in terms of her looks, yes, I'm a hater. I never went for full lines completely. As for any other support, you can just go with attack speed, crit, and HP, or some P block when you go for Shockman, or even more P block when you go for Iron Man, or M block when you go for the Trial of Flow. But when you can, you just go to chapter 10 and try out to see if you can beat this chapter by yourself. Reason for that is there is a nice amount of gear that is acquired from the TM raids, as well as the story mode is just very, very good. In contrast to the previous patches where Manticore set was the best, TM gears are way better. And I will give you guys an example on my chase gear, which is full TM gear right now. But just take my word for it, Manticore set takes up so much time, even with the newest patch where you can get yourself a selector. This doesn't mean that your Manticore sets are totally useless. So to get these items, you go to Guild Raid and you select one of these bosses, and then you'll end up killing them. The rewards will give you at least one box. However, the way that I view it, most of the people between 6 months and a year will get their full Manticore set, which is a very long time if you do it purely free to play. But to get yourself a selector, you need some cocaine, and you need yourself some Beast Chaos powder, and you need yourself a Beast Chaos core. Now the cores are easily acquired through the guild raid shop. If you have yourself a guild that can kill the hell mode onto the last boss, you will get yourself 2 Beast Chaos cores. Now if you kill them twice, which can be done, you can actually get a first selector within 1 week. The only problem with it is you only get 2 gear options per try, which means that you can definitely get good things, but you can almost always get bad things. Unless you're caught left there and you roll 4 attack lines at one go, no reforge. But now to get these Beast Chaos powders, you open up one of these boxes of Manticore set, you go to new, and then you end up grinding one of these things. Now there are 2 ways to get your Manticore set super good, and one of the reasons is one that I tried personally, but that was way back when I started 2 years ago. So I started out with T6 gear. Now the reason why the T6 gear is really good is because you cannot get double lines. And the reason why this is really good, because it makes it super easy to get gear that gives you options like these. Because if I make this to T7 and I reroll the accuracy out, I have an attack, crit, and HP plus a penetration, or even get double attack. Because starting from T7 you can get yourself double the lines. Now if you get an item which is attack speed, crit damage, you can get either the attack speed out and get penetration for that once you get a T7, or even go for attack, which makes the whole transition from T6 to 7 to T8 a super easy feature. Now to get yourself into that transition from T6 to T7, you need to have yourself a Manticore claws. These are also easy to acquire. And the other route would simply just be go for these things, be super lucky, have yourself your Manticore set. Now before we go into the TM gear, let's emphasize on one thing: how to gear your main damage dealers. And the reason I want to emphasize on this is very simple. I get so many questions on how do I build this character, and I go with a general rule of thumb: attack is necessary for every single class, crit up to 100% necessary for every class, but attack speed and penetration might not be useful for every single class. So you have to read the skill descriptions, and I'm gonna give you guys a prime example. Now Chase is one of those characters that is very nasty. If I go to the skills, go to the S4, it has a built-in 250 crit rate. Now if I would even combine that with the opportune strikes, which gives me 150 crit chance, that is 400 crit chance on base. Which means that if I look at this, I have an over crit commit. However, if I don't want to take this perk and take something else because there's a lot of enemies, then the Warlike perk would be way better if I still have myself 100% crit rate. Combining that with the Goddess of Blessing, which also gives 150, I need even way less crit. So is this gear optimized? In contrast, no, not really. But is it good for Galgoria? Yes, because he lowers crit rate by about 300 or 400, which is ridiculous. So over crit committing is not necessarily bad. And if a monster or an enemy on PvP has crit rate resistance, going for over crit is still really good. Then on the remove limit, you have yourself attack speed by 350, which means that the soft cap of 1600 is easily acquired, and also says that attack speed grows larger as the time passes, which means that he will get the soft cap anyway. You have another priest perk that gives you 150 attack speed, so giving yourself the soft cap is really good. So then the question would be, does my Chase need any attack speed for that point? And I would say no, not at all. However, a thing that he might need is penetration. He has no defense ignore skills, which is also a very nice trait that some of these characters have. For instance, my Celine has a lot of penetration on this. I don't even know why, because it just is there. But do I need it? No, because she has a perk on S2, ignores defense when there's only one enemy, which means that penetration on itself is not really that good. Same for Celine. Once again, does she need any attack speed? Oh wait. No, on a critical hit, you get 500 attack speed. But no, that is unnecessary. But then would you need more crit? Yes, because the T5 Dark will give you 300 reduction of crit chance, but then increases 150 crit chance. So if you get yourself a nice amount of crit extra, you can still get yourself 100% crit rate. And also do take note that some of these characters, do take into account that some of these T5 Darks will give you more crit rate, more attack speed, or anything else. But then for the question, for people who don't get attack speed, well, the question would be, does your character really need attack speed? Because for one, we got Panzeroni, doesn't need a whole lot of attack speed. Reason why is her main damage is coming from burst, not auto attacks. So in that manner, would you then go for attack speed? I would say no. Would you then go for penetration? Yes, because she has no defense ignore. And then the last stat that I'd like to emphasize on, do you need any critical damage? And for most cases, I would say no. Because there are a lot of characters that will give you a nice amount of crit damage. Like 99.9% of the people will run Lavril in their teams. Reason why? Because she's one of the lowest investment ampers in the game. Absolutely insane. Will give you a lot of critical damage necessary. Characters like Chase, like Celine, they will give themselves a lot of critical damage. We have Lilia on the S3, Panzerona on S3 or the UT3 will give you a lot of critical damage as well. So the scalability on the attack lines are way more than critical damage can ever give you. Because there are a lot of supportive characters that will give you critical damage just as Lavril is doing. And then we come up with what I'd like to say is the most difficult part of Kingsraid, and that is acquiring yourself TM gear that is useful for your specific character. Now let's go over a few lanes that I think are absolutely worth it. Starting off with Eclipse. There are a few Eclipse lines that are absolutely ridiculous. One of them is this, 3% times 12 in terms of damage. This is basically a Book of the Map 5-star on just one of these items. Great. However, this takes time to ramp up, which means that for World Boss 3, this might not be the most effective item because the timer is very much lower. This also means that on Eclipse, this is probably the best gear set that you can potentially get. Now, there is another one worth mentioning, which is 75% extra attack, which says at the beginning of each battle, attack increases by 5%. This effect can stack up to 15 times, which means if you get more of these stages, you will get more attack accordingly. Absolutely broken item. Is this actually better than the previous one? I don't even know. I don't do math all that well, but I'd like to say this one is pretty broken. Another one worth mentioning is increases own damage to enemies by 25% when HP is above 95%. Now this seems like a nasty feature for newer players, and I do believe that to be the case, but if you have yourself a Fallen Fray shield, you never see HP deplete unless you are running the Shockman sword. But I've heard onto a 0-star you can get yourself enough lifesteal if you have an auto attack character, so that might be quite interesting. Another one that might be interesting for my Celine, and that is increases damage that ignores defense by 25%. Is that really that much of the case? I don't quite know, but it says ignore defense, which is basically Celine's kit. Now there are some honorable mentions, and that is this one, which gives you 40% attack, or upon killing an enemy you can get yourself 50% attack as well. Now the question is, are these the only ones that are really good? No, there are some lines that are very specific towards certain characters. One of them could be Loman's, because when I run World Boss, he doesn't have enough soul weapon charges to get the full fight down. Another character that is worth mentioning is May, that uses the same gimmick, and you can then auto May completely throughout a full World Boss battle. Another few that I'd like mentioning is reduces cooldown on several skills. Now if I look at, let's say, Rahardna's S3 skill, which means if you pop it, more cooldown reduction, you can then get yourself more S3s up. Now the reason why this is useful, for one, you get way more money, you get more cooldown reduction, you get more attack boost. Now if you get this on a maximum, absolutely broken. But I think one of the best mentions is reduce cooldown by second skill by 10% every 10 seconds. If you can get 4 of these on your Lucius plus a pocket watch, you have a 0.5 second downtime on the Zone of Faith. Now I'm not sure if people really got hit by this before, but if you guys haven't, then my god, wait half a year, I'll probably have 4 of these items and we get to see unlimited amount of the don't fuck with me zone. But this, guys, is just Galgoria. But if you have yourself supporters that are not able to do any damage because you are a newer player, having this line is also really good. Increases attack of all allies by 5%. Now if you get 4 of these, you can get yourself 20% extra attack. And if you will compare it to the Dark Legion, which gives you like what, 13% attack, which gives you like what, 13% extra crit damage, the 5% attack is absolutely broken. Get 2 of these lines and something else, you are pretty much set for life. Now let's just start mentioning that Galgoria raids are mainly for your damage dealers. Now if you get yourself a bigger shield on your Fallen Fray by having a Galgoria shield, all hail to you. And then for your tanks, I would recommend this. However, this is only 200 seconds in, which means this is good in Eclipse, this is good in the Trial of Earth, Flow, Sky. Contrast is and your smaller Shockman, maybe the Dark Legion set. As for your healers, I would go for the Assalon set, which gives you 10% attack on all allies. However, if you have shields, let's say your Evan, your Fallen Fray, I would go for Galgoria instead. Now for the last piece of advice, if you go to the Technomagic management and if you look at all of your items, then you have yourself the enhancement. And the question would be, what item do I enhance first? Because the items on these are highly limited. Because you will need to have gear upgrading stones. These stones are the same requirement for, let's say, your first gear piece as your earrings. So let's say that in contrast to your main damage dealer, it would be way better for you to increase the base stats onto your earrings, starting with that. Because otherwise, if you want to get the restoration done, which takes up a lot, and I mean a lot of resources, which are limited as well in a time frame, then you are basically killing your own progress. So if you want to enhance any of your TM gear on your main damage dealer, start with the earring 100%. So guys, that was it for the video. Hope you guys found this helpful. If you did, make sure to like, sub, and definitely if I forgot anything, put it down into the comments, let me know. But for now, you know what the deal is. I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.